Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is Mr. DB333, and welcome back to Suzerain. In the last video, well, had a pretty dang eventful previous turn. We were almost murdered, so that was fun. We arrested a bunch of old guard people, joined up with the ATO, and I think we've just about avoided a war. It's gonna be a little hard to say. Looks like we have the Alliance of Nations coming up. So, actually, speak of the devil. Let's see, we have a schedule, according to dates outlined. We're flying to Constantium, like Constantinople. It's funny that I was talking to a friend of mine on Discord, a Turkish fella, and I pointed out, because I kind of noticed this about Suzerain and the nation of Suzerain. It is very, very, very similar to Turkey around this time, if you think about it. Former monarchy, Ottomans, Kingdom of Suzerain, overthrown. You have a unstable time where you end up having a figure implement a new constitution through some, and though there's a democracy, kind of hang on through sort of undemocratic means. Seoul and Ataturk, although Ataturk is a lot cooler than Seoul is, for the record. You have a pretty vocal and distinct minority group, which has not really had a very good go of it in the country. The Blues, or make parallels to the Kurds, maybe the Armenians, if you want to go that far, perhaps. Plus, I believe the game devs are they're based in Germany. I think they're Turkish Germans, or Turkish immigrants to Germany, or their families were Turkish. I forget exactly how to describe it. Let's see. It's like Turkish Germans, I think, because, you know, African Americans, or like Italian Americans, they come from Italy to America, so it would be Turkish Germans, right? I don't know. That's just me spitballing a little bit. Probably get working on all this now. So let's go to the Alliance of Nations. I, David Whiskey, and the rest of the soldier delegation to the AON arrived in Cairo. The local police escorted us to the Alliance headquarters in downtown Constantium, immediately recognizable by its gleaming dome. On entering the building, we were met with a parliamentary guide who briefed us about the procedures. After a strict security scanning, the staff ushered us to the third floor. We entered the massive circular assembly hall and took our designated seats. David sat next to me. All the world's most powerful people under one gleaming dome. One wrong word, and the world will go to hell. High pressure, I know. Just believe in yourself, Anton. From what I have seen, you will do just fine. How are you feeling, Anton? Ever since the assassination, I'm amazed you've been holding up so well. But it must have been tough for Miss Rain and the kids. We managed. Somehow. It is tough to be the president, making harsh decisions and dealing with their consequences. I wish I could have supported you more, but this time has been a cruel mistress. What you've done so far is more than enough. Don't treat yourself too harshly. From a distance, you could hear the President of the General Assembly, Mr. Nines, approaching his designated position. Well, the session's about to start. Let's get comfortable. It's going to be a long day. Mr. Nines opened the session with a short speech and called the first speaker to the floor. It is my great pleasure to invite the Prime Minister of Lesbia to address the assembly. Patricio Alvarez stood and walked up the podium as the assembly applauded. Mr. President, it is my pleasure to return to this podium. David leaned in and spoke in a low voice. Let's see how crazy this year's session will get. I'm surprised he isn't drunk. David chuckled. When I last spoke here, the message I gave was of encouragement and support of his organization and the vital role it plays. Of all the challenges Eastern Macopa and the whole world have faced since then, one has grown larger and more imminent than any other. The threat of the so-called socialist states and the actions taken by their authoritarian rulers with no regard to international law. A loud noise came from the table of Volkland. I saw Emmerich Hegel pounding his fist on the table in protest. Looks like the Chancellor's already mad. David nodded. Today, the need to come together as the leaders of the free world is more important than ever. The CSP under the leadership of United Cortana has been fueling Volkland's military-industrial complex and its expansionist aims in Eastern Macopa. The world cannot turn a blind eye to the increasing naval presence of Volkland in the Marquian Sea. We hereby call for immediate withdrawal of all naval vessels with any offensive capability from international waters. A loud noise came from the assembly hall in response. Most of the Western Macopan delegates were clapping, whilst others shouted in protest or sat in stony silence. Let us not also forget about the recent events that transpired in another state with socialist teachings, a state which wages war against its own innocent citizens, Velen. It's a bunch of horseshit. Velen isn't even socialist. Strictly speaking, Smolak's party is called the Vezek National Party of North Socialism. Their purge of the minorities in the country was again largely ignored by the international community. I would go as far as to call it a genocide. Velen violated our past treaties and mobilized their armed forces, deploying them to closer to our borders and authorizing them to partake in massacres. Lesbia was affected not only by the large wave of refugees coming from Velen, but by the subsequent government seizure of all of our companies that were active in the country. We hereby call member states to action against Velen and its rogue government. Thank you. Honestly, not a bad speech. I agree. Walked back to a seat among its enthusiastic applause from most Macopan delegates. President Nines waited for the noise to calm down and invited next speaker, the president of Velen, Victor Smolak. Fuck, what voice did I have for him? Smolak stood up. As he walked past Patricia Alvarez, he brushed him aside with an exaggerated sweep of his arms. When he reached the podium, he fumbled with a microphone for a few seconds. Then he smiled as Alvarez mockingly as he raised the height of it. Look at all the theatrics. Yeah, that's him. Victor Smolak turned to President Nines and bowed slightly. Mr. President. He then turned back to us and stared out of the hall in a few seconds. Fellow delegates, it is true the world faces a multitude of challenges. In the midst of these challenges, the world's most powerful leaders gather here in Kairut. And what do? They make threats, promote hate, spread lies. Is this the AON we all want? Where is the cooperation and friendship? Where is the unity? I want to remind you of the wars that the West fought on our soil, the foreign troops who occupied our country and seized valuable resources. And I want to remind you how they stole the oil from our sacred soil, and they did not know when to stop. The ATO soldiers left, but their interference never ceased. They financed armed rebel groups whose only purpose was to create terror inside our country. So, fellow delegates, don't dare speak about Velen before you acknowledge your own involvement in our civil war, before you acknowledge your own dark past. I kept watching. As is well known, after the tremendous tragedy of the Velen Civil War, Arcasia made a deal with UC, where they agreed upon the withdrawal of their troops, along with the removal of half of our army. Not only did they weaken us, they were left alone in facing the genocidal BFF, which the ATO funds along with Rumberg. I will show you some of the evidence of foreign interference. He picked up a large stack of papers and waved them back and forth. I have clear evidence of direct aid from Rumberg to the Blutish Freedom Front. They smuggled tons of Ka-74s in Velen. They smuggled in their spies, smuggled in mercenary commanders. He's finally talking about we're not the only ones now. So it seems. These documents will be published everywhere. Copies have already been sent to the Investigative Affairs of the AN. I expect this organization to do its task and investigate this properly instead of leaving Velen behind, as they have always done. Coming back to the claims of lesbian representatives, first, there is no evidence of civilian massacres by Vezek forces, nor so-called purges of minorities. Second, the operation was limited only to the militant BFF, not the Bloods in general. Third, we know your government is also implicated in the funding of the BFF, and that your oil companies aided their militants during the operation. Fourth, as was stated, we took only what was ours. The companies the delegates spoke of were not only aiding militants, they were brought by Velen, by force. Knowing that Velen will no longer recognize the rights of any other country to determine what type of weapons we're permitted to possess or what type of policies we follow within our borders. Velen stands stronger and more united than ever. Our people have spoken, the enemies inside our border are crushed. Now I ask every delegate here to read our report on the connection of the West with the armed militants in Eastern Mokopa, and he asks the AN to do what's right. Velen only wants peace. Our people want peace. They are counting on the support and understanding of all the nations of the world. The proclamation is, Free Velen or Death. The assembly roared with particularly loud applause coming from the seat of Recon nations. Seems popular with Rika, doesn't he? Well, he played the victim here pretty strongly. His anti-imperial stance has definitely earned him sympathies from Ricans. Most of that continent still achieved stability after gaining their independence from their colonial suzerains. It's easy to forget that it's only been a few years since the revolutions. Victor slowly walked back to his seat as he applauded himself. He saluted the Rican delegates as he passed them. Next, President Nines invited Martin Van Horten to the podium. He walked up to the microphone with quick steps. Fuck, how did this guy's voice sound like? He was frowning, clenching his fist. I could almost see his jaw trembling. He looks pissed. Can you blame him? His name is being harassed by Volksland every day now. Mr. President, fellow delegates of the Assembly, and friends. It is an honor to be with you today. I wish we could meet under different circumstances. Once again, the CSP nations, in particular Volksland, have shown us what they're willing to do to achieve their political aims. I must first thank the delegates from Sortland for being brave enough to recognize our Helga land, while the rest of the world left us alone. We were one of the first countries to propose proper cooperation between Eastern Mokopan nations. Yet when we were threatened by Volksland and expansionism, no one came to our aid. Though Mr. Alvarez voices indirect support for us earlier in today's session, I can't keep myself from wondering where he was when our fleets were attacked by the very socialists he spoke about. So here I am, asking for support of the fellow member states of the AN. Agnolia is under attack by Volksland. A loud banging noise emerged from the table of Volkslandian delegates. All of them were pounding their fists on the table. I kept watching. Mr. President, please moderate the assembly. This is more than disrespectful. Emmer Kegel began shouting curses as repeatedly Nina's really banged his gavel for order. After a minute of back and forth shouting, noise settled and Nina's allowed Martin to continue. As you all know, our drilling ships, oil tankers, and even fishing vessels have been disappearing in the Zamakian Sea, captured or sunk by Volksland. And the Volkslanding fleet is patrolling the seas around Helgoland with complete disregard for international laws. I call on the AN to find a resolution to this never-ending conflict that Volksland created, which demands the immediate withdrawal of all naval forces from our territorial waters. Millennium Terror surrounds us on all sides. I call the democratic will to action against the tyranny of millennialism, authoritarianism, militarism, and extremism. Loud banging noises started again. Hegel stood up and approached Rostrom. You are a spineless jock! A lackey of Caucasian imperialism! I'm sorry, I had to bring out the spear voice. President Nine has called for silence and started hitting the gavel. What does he think he's doing? All of your complaints against us are a direct result of your capitalist and neo-colonial systems. President Inez, please, what is this? President Inez smacked his gavel in vain. A shouting match broke out in the assembly. Finally, after a few minutes, the other Volkslandian delegates convinced Hegel to sit back down. I believe I don't need to speak anymore about this subject. Everything is clear as day. Mr. Hegel's actions speak volumes about the reality of Volksland and their corrupted ideology. I hope to see this conflict resolved with the help of the AN soon. He quickly left the podium and nodded to the other Agnolian delegate. The two quickly left the assembly hall. President Nine has announced the next speaker, Emmer Kegel. Hegel immediately took his place and spoke in a low, seething tone. Thank you. I watched Hegel and waited for him to continue. Here we go. First of all, I want to extend a due welcome to the new states from Rika that have joined this organization. After fighting for years against colonialism and imperialism, they have more than earned our membership vote. I'm overjoyed to see them finally represented in this assembly. As our numbers grow and more states are represented in this stage, we become ever closer to finding a resolution for the conflicts that plague us. For hundreds of years, the dominant economies in Makopa raised, pillaged, and exploited the continents of Rika and Zena. Sadly, Volgson was also a part of this plunder in the years before the revolution, when it still clung to the idea of imperialism. But when the masses found their voice, the old colonial powers and their new financiers turned against them. These powers did whatever they could to hamper our revolutions. They did not want our people to be heard. They are scared of us for showing the possibility of a better path. Because they don't want us to succeed, they threaten the productivity that runs on the blood and sweat of their working class. And now, they have started labeling us the aggressors. Yet we all know it was the Acadians who built up military bases all around the Makopa. It was the ATOs that first formed to fight against millennialism. Kept watching. Volgson holds the right to protect its territorial waters and threats from trade. Delta Magna, Lesbia and Agnola brought up the Flanco Treaty. But what are they doing when NATO forces patrol the Tekken seas? They were silent. It was about Helgeland, about the Vogs being killed by the Agnolian government because they protested against an appointed governor. Agnolians are allies and Swordsland have no right to claim they are upholding liberty and democracy. Other nations have no right to intervene in the matters between Agnolia and Volgson. Just as no country in the world has the right to determine what type of naval vessels we use, no country can force us not to defend our seas. If there's a conflict the Alliance can resolve, let's start with the Arcadian base on Ravnos Island. Lesbia has been housing Arcadian troops and missiles by our border for years, and none of the member states even talked about it. Also want the member states to look into Arcadian bases in both Lesbia and Swordsland. If the AN truly claims to have the people's best interests at heart, they cannot stay silent about what the Agnolian government did in Helgeland, as they took away the rights of our people. Perhaps then there can be proper dialogue between our nations and the AN can finally demonstrate that it serves its intended purpose. But unfortunately, the AN remains all too willing to overlook such human rights violations. As the Valdianian government is ready as always to fight the forces of oppression and colonial servitude on behalf of the free people everywhere. He raised his left fist. Revolution Vescore. That's Swordish? Did I catch that right? He said the revolution will come, yes, but it was in Old Volgish. Very similar to Swordish, right? Some words were even written the same way. I'm surprised you caught that from his accent. Most of the delegation from Xena, Rika, and Contana responded with thunderous applause. Hegel shook hands with him as he walked back to his seat. Prison 9 has announced the next speaker, Queen Beatrice Livingston. Ah, this bitch. Look at this smug bitch. Dear President of the Assembly, dear delegates, dear leaders of the world. Just as my fellow Eastern Makopan delegates spoke about the troubles plaguing our continent, I also have to bring attention to a growing threat in our region, Swordsland. As you know, not long ago, Swedish aircraft with offensive capabilities were spotted inside our borders. A few days later, they shot down one of our planes inside our own airspace. It was practically an act of war. Know this, Wimberg will do anything in its power to defend itself and its interests. Whether Swordsland's actually planning something or not, our Swedish neighbors and what they are doing is very concerning. They took in traitors and gave them protection. Their president went so far as to blame our country for spying on his administration through his own private secretary. And he expects the world to believe his lies. That hag. Let's hear her out first. I hereby invite all of you to determine the initiation of a proper intergovernmental investigation into Swordsland. If the Alliance continues to shirk its given duties, you can trust in Rumberg to take matters into her own hands. It's also important to point out that Rumberg would not stand idly by if more Arcadian military are transferred in eastern Makopa. I hereby condemn both the ATO and Swordsland for allowing Arcadia to settle in our region. Before I finish, I also want to say, Mr. Smolak, I'm looking forward to reading your report. I wonder what so-called evidence is all about. Know that your slander does not work on us. Know that we are ready to die for our freedom. Know that our kingdom stands firm and strong. Expect a grand awakening. Thank you. Grand awakening? That sounded like a threat. She left the rostrum without getting much applause. Then Prison Nina spoke my name. Mr. Anton Rain, President of Sordlin, I invite you to address the assembly. David and Lee started applauding. Good luck, Mr. President. I walked up to the rostrum and took my place at the podium. In front of me were some of the most powerful leaders in the entire world. I looked them in the eyes. Thank you, Mr. President. Fellow delegates. Sordlin remains committed to the Alliance of Nations, the ideals that gave birth to it. We remain devoted to the dream of a peaceful and free world, a united world. Our century is a century of the struggle for freedom, the century of liberation from foreign occupiers. Now it's more important than ever to set aside our differences and unite under this charter. Now I'd like to address some of the topics mentioned here today. We are deeply saddened by the tragic events that took place in Velen. I have to admit that operation resulted in many unnecessary deaths. I'd also like to address the Queen of Rumburg. Sordlin always wanted to have peace between our nations, yet we are being threatened by Rumburg. It was Rumburg who shot our aircraft within our airspace. We only defended our borders. I also have some evidence to show the Assembly. Mr. Smolak was right about the KA-74s. We discovered that many militant groups in Sordlin were being financed or armed by Rumburg. There is also another important piece of evidence that we have, provided to us by someone close to the Rumburgian government. Mr. Hailstone was branded a traitor in the Rumburg for blowing the whistle on the country's hidden nuclear facilities. I hereby call on the AN to serve its duty. Rumburg and its nuclear facilities must be properly investigated. Thank you for listening to our concerns. I wish to see a resolution from the AN soon. We stand and always stand for the rights of the people of Sordlin and Eastern Macopa, just as those in other continents. Long live the Alliance of Nations. Long live peace and unity. Amorga Vescor. There was some applause from the assembly. Thank you. I left the podium. Walked back to my seat. David did not stop applauding until I stepped down. How was it? It was not a bad speech, Mr. President. You did well. President Nina's announced the next speaker, Dwight Walker. Mr. President, I want to first congratulate you on your election to this high office. Mr. Secretary, delegates of the AN, ladies and gentlemen, fellow friends. We meet again on our quest to bring peace and light into this world, but even though some of the clouds have been lifted, the world has not yet escaped the darkness. The Containment Security Pact is rapidly expanding its influence. It's very troubling to see the democratic nation of Macopa be threatened by these millennialist powers. I refer, of course, to the President of Augsland and containing fleets in the Markian Sea. They are harassing other nations and hampering international trade. Is this not an attack against world peace? An attack against the free trade nations of the world? Today, our obligations to the world peace are being tested by UC and the Millennialist Bloc. If we fail to counter the threat, if we stay idle and allow them to surround us with their war machines and blockades, if the attackers do not face any consequences, then this unstable peace we believed we had built will be the world's downfall, and posterity will point its finger at us for not stopping it. Emmerich Hegel and the other Volksland delegates started making noise again. This time Hegel had taken off his shoe and was banging it off the table. What the heck? It's getting ridiculous. He's not even ashamed at his age. Despite its claims, the CSP's actions will only bring about war. Yet we still believe the UC and Arcasia, together with their allies, can come to an understanding. For our mutual benefit and our desire to avoid the destruction of the world. We believe that all the people of the world must be free to choose their own future. No country, be it Arcasia or UC, has the right to impose its values on others. But I will see this leaders of the UC. If either of us is to be secure, we need peaceful cooperation, not defense systems, forced blockades, or shows of naval superiority. If the AN cannot find resolution to the conflict, the ATO remains ready and able to react. Hegel stood up with his shoe in his hand. What is that supposed to mean? You're promoting Von ZAN? Mr. President, this cannot... Nines slammed the gavel down and shouted, "Silence, please. Mr. Chancellor, please let me finish. We do not interrupt you when you address the Assembly. I must also raise concerns about the threat that Runeberg poses to Eastern Makopa. The Speaker preceding me clearly showed the tensions are rising. Reports from Velen and Sorlin are troubling. The representative from both countries referred to KS-74 as being smuggled within their borders. Mr. Rain also pointed out the construction of nuclear weaponry in Runeberg. Our intelligence also confirms this. Occasionally, the ATO will stand against the aggression of Runeberg. They are playing a dangerous game, one that may bring ruin to Makopa and our own lands. And I believe the AN can find a resolution to this conflict as well. If not, let it be known that Occasion will stand together with Sorlin. Runeberg cannot do as it pleases." Nice. This is definitely good news. Arcasia has shown clear support for us. Finally, I propose that the AN undertake the noble cause of helping the people of the world through rewriting and properly enforcing its Human Rights Declaration. The AN cannot survive as a static organization. Its size and duties are increasingly enormous. It should adapt to the changing world. But peace and rights do not rest in the hands of this organization alone. They rely on the hearts of our people and the spirit of cooperation between our nations. So let me know, my fellow inhabitants of this world. Let's take our stand and see if we can finally achieve a lasting peace. Thank you. Was the Assembly applauded speech, the ATO delegates in particular. I stood up and applauded. The applause continued for some time. Walker shook hands with various delegates on his way back to his seat. President Nines announced the last speaker before the break. It was Leon Melinev. Melinev walked slowly to the rostrum in his iconic suit. All the CSP delegates stood up and applauded him. How do I want to do his voice? Honorable Chairman and fellow delegates of the AN, here we are again at the most esteemed meeting of state representatives in the world. However, increasingly we are being threatened, disregarded, attacked, or ignored in this assembly. President of Arcasia has just shown the unfriendly attitude towards us yet again. Arcasia would have let you believe that we were standing in the way of lasting peace. Yet the peace they talk about was only possible thanks to our missiles and our growing base in the developing world. The ATO kept waging wars against people's revolutions and forcing new independent states to be their puppets, binding them to themselves through the Arcasian Lyra. And now yet another Arcasian president is telling us that we are aggressors, and that they are the keepers of peace. We will not be silent anymore against these lies. When was this peace you talked about? Where was this cooperation between our countries? Have you accepted our invitation to talk about denuclearization? If you don't like us, don't accept our deals. Don't listen to our concerns and keep pointing fingers at us. Why did you invite us to be AN? Every year UC comes to this assembly to address the real problems of real people. People who suffer because of your systems, your wars, and your ignorance. Whether you like it or not, we'll keep representing the laborers, the slaves, the oppressed of the world. And believe it or disregard it, history is on our side. We say to the representatives of capitalist countries, come and visit us. Come and see the revolution working in Contana. Show our continent to your people without distorting the reality. If you cannot do that, then you need not come. We believe socialism will triumph over capitalism in the end, such as the logical conclusion of the human development of humankind. This time, lesbian delegates started laughing very loudly. Some other delegates booed. I kept watching. You can keep laughing, gentlemen. Communism will bury you. Certainly loud laughing turned to shouting. If you really believe in cooperation, we will be waiting. We're not going anywhere. However, if the ATO keeps intervening in our matters, It's natural the CSB would react. Despite threats from the ATO, Runeberg, any other nation or organization, we must not succumb to further division or violence. We must ask ourselves, what do the people of our countries expect of us? They surely don't want war and bloodshed. So let us leave to our children and grandchildren good memories of our time and a better future for all. Let them look at history and say, once there were great divisions and complex problems, but the leaders of the world came together in the end and succeeded in settling them in order to ensure our peaceful lives. Let us act in such a way to make this session not a session of threats, but a session of hope, and the realization of them. The governments of UC and the United Peoples Canton already have served their duties for world peace. Long live the People's Revolution. I did not react to his speech. We simply broke into massive applause. The applause continued for some time. Mileniev walked slowly back to his seat as the president announced a break. That was a lot. Yeah. Let's grab some lunch. Lead the way. We walked up the hall to have some lunch and fresh air. Whew. So our Air Force has been modernized. Very nice. Ooh. Oh, that's not good. I'll wait on that for a second. The ambassador extended their full support after recent revelations about Runeberg on the international stage. So once they receive a guarantee that the international community will stand by its territorial integrity and independence in these times. Let's go! David had scheduled a private meeting with me, but he didn't specify what it was about. I heard a knock on the door. Mr. President, may I come in? Yes, David. Please come in. Thank you. He slowly made his way towards a chair in front of my desk and sat down. First of all, thank you for your time. Anything for you, David. I wanted to ask you how you're doing. Honestly, I'm tired, David. I'm tired of it all. Oh, I know the feeling. Trust me, I know. Sometimes you just want to throw away all the responsibility and escape. Perhaps into the wilderness, perhaps to the sea. That would be nice, wouldn't it? But I could never do that. Unfortunately, men of power are bound by their duty and their responsibility to the nation. What a privilege for me. I had the chance to watch my student grow into a fine and strong leader in my lifetime. What a privilege indeed. You've brought reform to Swordsland. You, my student, actually did it. You don't know how proud I was to be alongside you. It wouldn't be possible without you. You're too kind, Mr. President. David coughed again. I overheard a conversation the other day near a newspaper stand. Piqued my interest, so I kept listening. They were talking about you. They were calling you a radical centrist. What do you think about that? Damn. They had to do it to me. I guess I am a centrist. My father, Arthur S. Whiskey, used to say, always know yourself. It's good to know that you do too. So, the elections are fast approaching. How are you feeling about your chances? I can't say for sure, but I'm hopeful. Good. That's what a leader should say. I'm afraid I have an announcement to make to you. Why? What's wrong? After this term is done, I will be retiring. David, I can't accept this. You're irreplaceable in my cabinet. I have been in this line of work for many decades now. I swore an oath for myself years ago. I would quit if I ever felt like I didn't have the physical capability to serve anymore. At that point, I would become a hindrance. That time has come, Mr. President. My bones are aching, my hands are shaking, my voice is failing. Besides, I'm sure you can find a younger minister who's a little more full of life. He winked at me and chuckled, which turned into another cough. You've been a mentor, a teacher, and a friend. Thank you for your service to his country. It was an honor, Mr. President. David stood up to leave. We hugged. Before I go, I want to mention something. He looked around before grabbing my arm and lowering his voice. You're probably being watched, so I must be very brief. Be careful of the military. I think they are planning something. I've lived long enough to see 2 coups in my lifetime, and let's just say I've gotten better at recognizing the signs. You must remember what happened to my father, Anton. Just be careful and take care of your family. Take this as the last piece of advice from me. He suddenly raised his voice again. Best of luck, Anton. Thank you. He turned around and left. Ooh. Women for Reign. 53.4% of women would vote for me. There we go. Well, we got a choice to make. Intelligence confirmed what confirmed the information from the Rumbergian whistleblower was true. Rumberg does have nuclear weapons capable of threatening Sordelin and Eastern Marcopa. The AN has ratified a barrage of sanctions on Rumberg by the member states. Well, I'm kind of in a crossroads at this point. I think if we get the threat, it's not guaranteed. But it is very, very possible, even likely, that we will get couped. So we still have a bit of time. So I'm actually going to end the video here. If I have any commenters or people on the Discord watching this, let me know, because we can transfer our money, and then we can decide whether or not we want to leave or not. So I'll leave that to you guys. This has been a democratic game after all, so I will leave it to the people whether or not we should stay strong, hold out the elections, see if we retire, or try to get the fuck out while we still can. I'll leave it up to you guys, though. So I'll leave. Until next time, my friends, thank you for watching. If you like this video, leave a like. If not, feel free to dislike. If you want to see more of this content in the future, hit the sub button for uploads weekdays as well as occasionally Saturdays. If you have any comments, feedback, concern, leave in the comment section below. I read all comments. Again, appreciate any all feedback you might have for me. If you want to chat, play games, and sort, check out my Discord. If you want to see me bucks monthly every month, check out my Patreon. If you want to see me do sort of live, check out my Twitch. If you want to see me do non-gaming related content, I have a second channel, all which are down in the description box below. That's really it for now, ladies and gentlemen. My name has been Mr. Dogboat333. I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.